The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be a celebration, but it became the night everything shattered. Lauren sat at the long mahogany table in Marcus's family home, surrounded by 46 guests, both families united for what should have been a joyous evening. The chandelier cast warm light over expensive china, and conversations hummed pleasantly around her. She was smoothing down the fabric of her dress nervously when Marcus stood, champagne glass in hand. She'd been with him for 5 years. 5 years of building a life together, of planning this exact moment. She expected a heartfelt toast about their journey, maybe something funny about their first date. What she got instead changed everything. "I need everyone here to understand something important," Marcus announced, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. "Elena will always be part of my life. She was my first love, and that connection doesn't just disappear because I'm getting married." Lauren's breath caught. Across the table, she felt her father's grip tighten on the edge of the tablecloth. Marcus's mother was nodding approvingly, a small, satisfied smile playing at her lips. His father looked pleased, as if this was exactly what they'd been coaching him to say. "I believe in evolved relationships," Marcus continued, seeming to grow more confident with each word. "In modern families that aren't bound by outdated possessiveness. Elena and I have a bond that transcends traditional labels, and I need my future wife to respect that." Lauren stared at the white tablecloth, her mind racing. Part of her was calculating non-refundable deposits. The venue, the caterer, the florist. Another part was simply trying to process what was happening. Her hands trembled beneath the table, but she kept her face carefully neutral. "So here's what I'm saying." Marcus looked directly at her, something almost triumphant in his expression. "If you can't accept that Elena will be at family gatherings, that she'll be someone I confide in, then maybe we need to reconsider this whole thing." Her mother made a small, choked sound, quickly covered by a cough. Her father's face had gone dangerously red. Marcus's mother actually laughed, a light, tinkling sound that made Lauren's stomach turn. "Oh, don't look so shocked, everyone," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "This is how mature adults handle relationships. Not with jealousy and insecurity, but with openness and trust." Lauren could feel every single person at that table watching her, waiting to see how she'd respond. In the past, in all the years they'd been together, she would have nodded, smiled, apologized for not being evolved enough. She would have swallowed her hurt and tried harder to fit into their vision of what a modern partner should be. Her younger sister reached for her hand under the table, squeezing gently. But Lauren pulled away. She didn't need comfort right now. She needed clarity. "So that's an ultimatum," Lauren said quietly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Accept your ex-girlfriend as a permanent fixture in our marriage or cancel the wedding." Marcus blinked, clearly not expecting her to state it so plainly. "I mean, I wouldn't put it that way. But that is what you're saying." She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing her fiancé's face. Here he was, in front of both their families, 2 weeks before their wedding, giving her an impossible choice and acting like it was reasonable. "I'm asking you to be reasonable," he said, an edge creeping into his voice. "To not be so controlling." His mother nodded vigorously. "This possessive behavior is exactly why modern relationships fail. You need to grow beyond these antiquated notions of ownership." Lauren stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the expensive hardwood floor. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. Everyone froze. "Okay," she said. Marcus frowned. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I'll cancel the wedding." Her voice was steady, calm, like she was confirming a lunch reservation rather than ending a 5-year relationship. The silence that followed was absolute. Her mother started crying quietly. His parents' smug expressions cracked like porcelain. "Wait, you can't just," Marcus started, his face going pale. "You gave me an ultimatum. I'm choosing." Lauren picked up her purse with hands that barely shook. "Mom, Dad, we're leaving." Her parents stood immediately, chairs scraping back. Her sister grabbed their coats from the hall closet with practiced efficiency. "This is ridiculous." Marcus's mother shrieked, her composed facade shattering completely. You're throwing away a perfectly good relationship because you're too insecure to. Good evening, Lauren interrupted, and walked toward the door. The formality of it, the ice-cold politeness in the face of chaos, was more devastating than any dramatic exit could have been. Marcus followed them into the foyer, grabbing her arm. You're being crazy right now. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. Just sleep on it. Lauren looked down at his hand on her arm, then slowly raised her eyes to meet his. Let go. He did, stepping back as if burned. We'll talk tomorrow when you've calmed down, he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice very clear. As they walked to her parents' car, shouting erupted behind them, Marcus's parents arguing with him, voices raised in recrimination. Lauren's hands were trembling, but not from doubt. From relief. Her mother kept looking back at the house, worry etched on her face. Honey, are you sure? Maybe if you just talk to him privately. I'm sure, Mom. And she was. For the first time in years, Lauren was absolutely, completely certain about something. Her father caught her eye in the rearview mirror and gave her the smallest nod of approval. The drive home was quiet, heavy with unspoken thoughts, but somehow comforting. Lauren's phone started buzzing before they'd even left Marcus's street. She turned it face down and didn't look at it again. 5 years, gone in the time it took to say one word, okay. But as they pulled into her driveway, the house she'd bought 2 years ago in her name alone, the house Marcus had never liked because it wasn't impressive enough, Lauren felt something unexpected wash over her. Peace. It was mixed with panic and grief and the terrifying knowledge that tomorrow she'd have to start making cancellation calls. But underneath it all was relief so profound it made her chest ache. She'd finally stopped shrinking herself to fit someone else's idea of evolved. Her parents didn't press her for details when they got inside. Her father made tea with practiced, careful movements while her mother disappeared upstairs. She returned a few minutes later with one of her favorite cardigans and draped it over Lauren's shoulders without a word. Lauren realized she was shivering despite it being late spring. Do you want us to stay? Her father asked quietly, setting the tea in front of her. No, I'm okay. I just need to process everything. They both hugged her, tight and fierce and full of unspoken support, before leaving. Lauren watched their taillights disappear down the street, then turned to face her empty house. Her phone was vibrating constantly in her purse, the buzzing insistent and angry. 47 messages. She made it through exactly 3 before she had to stop. The first was from Marcus. This is insane. Call me. We need to talk like adults. The second from his mother. I hope you're proud of yourself for ruining this family's evening with your theatrics. The third from his father. We've invested considerable money in this wedding. There will be legal consequences if you proceed with this reckless decision. Lauren set the phone on the kitchen counter and stared at it like it might explode. Part of her wanted to read the rest, to see what other accusations they'd hurl at her. But a larger part knew it would only make her doubt herself, and she couldn't afford that right now. 5 years. They'd been together 5 years. She thought about their first date, how he'd laughed at all her terrible jokes and held her hand across the table. She thought about the night he'd proposed, down on one knee in that park where they always walked, how certain she'd felt in that moment. When had it changed? When had she become the problem that needed to be solved, the obstacle to his enlightenment? Lauren pulled out her laptop and found the contract with their wedding planner, a warm woman named Patricia who'd been nothing but enthusiastic for the past 8 months. Her hands hovered over the keyboard. One email would start the avalanche of cancellation fees, angry vendors, disappointed guests, and inevitable social fallout. For just a moment, she let herself imagine going back. Apologizing, saying she'd overreacted, that she could be more understanding, more evolved. The wedding would proceed as planned. Everything would go back to normal. Except it wouldn't. Because now she knew what he really thought of her, what his parents thought. And she knew with absolute certainty that they'd expect her to swallow it all with a smile and never bring it up again. She typed the email to Patricia, her fingers shaking so badly she had to correct typos twice. Patricia, I need to cancel the wedding. I know this is incredibly last minute and there will be financial consequences. Please begin making the necessary calls tomorrow morning. I'll handle informing the guests personally. I'm so sorry for any inconvenience this causes. Thank you for understanding. She read it 4 times before hitting send. The whoosh sound felt final, like a door slamming shut on an entire chapter of her life. More messages kept coming, the phone lighting up with each new notification. Lauren turned it completely off and sat in her dark kitchen, listening to the house settle around her, the familiar creaks and groans somehow comforting in their normalcy. This house that she'd bought before Marcus moved in. This house that he'd never really liked because it wasn't big enough, wasn't in the right neighborhood, wasn't impressive enough for someone of his caliber. God, how had she not seen it before? All the little comments about her choices, her friends, her career aspirations. How he'd slowly isolated her from anyone who questioned their relationship. How his parents' evolved philosophy really just meant Marcus could do whatever he wanted while she was supposed to be grateful for his honesty. Her sister texted from their parents' number, "Are you okay? Mom is worried sick." Lauren replied, "I'm okay." Turned my phone off. "I'll call tomorrow. Thank you for being there tonight." Her sister's response came immediately, "Proud of you, by the way." That took guts. Those 4 words made Lauren start crying for the first time that night. Not sad tears, exactly. Relief mixed with grief mixed with something like pride. She'd stood up for herself. After years of making herself smaller, quieter, more accommodating, she'd finally said no. The clock on the microwave read 11:47 p.m. In 12 hours, she'd have to start facing the reality of what she'd done, the cancelled venue, the returned gifts, the awkward conversations with relatives, the financial disaster she was about to unleash on Marcus's family, who'd insisted on paying for everything so they could control every detail. But tonight, sitting in her kitchen in her mother's cardigan, Lauren felt something she hadn't felt in months, like herself. Not the version of her that had been trying so hard to fit into his family's idea of evolved and progressive. Not the Lauren who apologized for having completely reasonable boundaries. Just her, authentic and whole. Her phone, silent on the counter, seemed to pulse with unread messages. She knew they'd escalate. His mother would call her dramatic and unstable. His father would threaten legal action. Marcus would call her crazy, unable to handle adult conversations. Let them, she thought. Let them think whatever they needed to think. She'd chosen herself. And tomorrow, when she woke up, she'd start building a life where that choice mattered. Lauren went upstairs to her bedroom, the one she'd decorated before Marcus moved in. The curtains he'd said were too feminine still hung at the windows. The reading chair he'd claimed took up too much space sat in the corner. She settled into that chair and opened the book on her nightstand, the one she'd been reading in secret because he'd mocked her taste in fiction, calling it escapist and unsophisticated. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. Inside, she felt the first stirrings of something that would take her weeks to fully recognize: freedom. Patricia called at 8:15 the next morning. Lauren had been awake since 5, staring at her ceiling, mentally preparing for this conversation and all the ones that would follow. "I've started making calls," Patricia said, her voice careful and professional. "I wanted to give you a heads up about the financial situation before his family contacts you." Lauren's stomach dropped. "How bad is it?" Patricia paused, and Lauren could hear papers shuffling. The venue required a 70% deposit, non-refundable. The caterer, 50%. The florist, photographer, band, and cake all have cancellation clauses that were triggered. "We're looking at approximately $95,000 in losses." Lauren felt dizzy. $95,000? Yes. But Lauren, his father signed all the contracts. Technically, legally, he's liable for the cancellation fees, not you. Patricia hesitated before continuing. "I'm sorry. I know this isn't easy. But between you and me, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I could tell something wasn't right. You made the right choice. After they hung up, Lauren sat with her coffee growing cold in her hands. $95,000. Marcus's father had insisted on paying for everything, had made such a show of his generosity at every planning meeting. Now that generosity was going to cost him a small fortune. Her phone, which she'd turned back on to talk to Patricia, immediately started buzzing like an angry hornet. Marcus's father's name flashed on the screen. She let it go to voicemail, then listened with the phone held slightly away from her ear. This is financial ruin. His voice shook with barely controlled rage. $90,000 down the drain because you couldn't handle an adult conversation. My lawyer says we can sue for breach of promise, emotional distress, financial damages. Lauren deleted the voicemail and called her own lawyer, the same one she'd used when buying her house. The lawyer listened quietly as Lauren explained everything. When she finished, there was a pause. Do you have witnesses to the ultimatum? The lawyer asked. 23 people heard him say I should accept his ex-girlfriend as part of our marriage or cancel the wedding. Then you're fine. He gave you a clear choice. You made it. Breach of promise suits are nearly impossible to win in this state anyway, especially with documented coercion. Save all messages, all voicemails. Don't respond to any threats. Document everything. Marcus's father called 4 more times that day. Then his mother. Then Marcus himself. Lauren didn't answer any of them. By evening, she had voicemails from both his parents ranting about her selfishness, her immaturity, her inability to compromise. His mother's voice had lost all its smooth sophistication and sounded shrill, desperate. You've destroyed us financially. Do you understand that? We took out a loan for part of this wedding. All because you're too insecure to accept that relationships evolve. Lauren saved every message, just as her lawyer had advised. The next morning, Patricia called again. His father contacted me directly. He's not handling this well. He demanded I falsify documents to show you initiated the cancellation without cause. I refused and told him I have written records of the entire timeline, including the reason you gave for canceling. I'm sorry you're caught in the middle of this, Lauren said. Don't be. I've been doing this for 15 years. I can spot toxic family dynamics from a mile away. Patricia paused. For what it's worth, Lauren, I think you made the right call. I've seen what happens when people ignore red flags like that. It never ends well. Those words meant more than Patricia probably knew. Marcus's father's lawyer sent a formal letter 3 days later, full of intimidating legal language that boiled down to empty threats. Lauren's lawyer responded with a single concise page outlining the facts: public ultimatum, multiple witnesses, Marcus's own words documented by several attendees. They never heard from the family's lawyer again. But the calls and messages continued for days. His mother left a sobbing voicemail about how they'd have to sell things to cover the losses, how this was destroying their family. His father sent texts calling Lauren every vile name he could think of. Marcus alternated between begging her to reconsider and accusing her of being vindictive. One text read, "You knew this would hurt my family financially. That's why you did this, isn't it? To punish me." Lauren stared at that message for a long time. The delusion was almost impressive. He'd given her an ultimatum at a dinner party in front of dozens of witnesses, and somehow she was the villain for taking him at his word. She didn't respond. Silence, she was learning, was her best defense. 2 weeks after what should have been her wedding date, Lauren got a call from a cousin who'd been at the rehearsal dinner. "I thought you should know what they're saying," her cousin said. "His parents are telling everyone you had a breakdown, that you became irrationally jealous and called off the wedding in hysterics." Lauren's stomach tightened. "And what are other people saying?" Her cousin laughed. "That his parents are delusional. Everyone who was actually there knows what happened. Marcus stood up and basically told you to accept his ex-girlfriend as a permanent third wheel or leave. You left. Now they're trying to rewrite history, but it's not working." The truth, Lauren discovered, was spreading faster than their lies. Every person at that dinner was talking, and the story was always the same. Marcus had been disrespectful, his parents had encouraged it, and Lauren had handled it with remarkable grace and dignity. Marcus's father made one final attempt in the form of a certified letter demanding Lauren pay half the cancellation fees, as the ethical thing to do. Lauren's lawyer responded with copies of every threatening text, every harassing voicemail, every piece of evidence showing their campaign of intimidation. They attached witness statements from 3 people who'd been at the dinner, all describing Marcus's ultimatum in detail. They never heard from the family again. The financial disaster was complete for them. $95,000 gone, no legal recourse, no way to recover it. And worse than the money was the social humiliation. Everyone in their circle knew they'd backed Marcus's ultimatum and lost spectacularly. Lauren didn't feel victorious. She felt tired. But she also felt free. The knock on her door came on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after the cancelled wedding. Lauren was working from home, reviewing architectural plans at her dining table, when she heard a key sliding into her lock. Her stomach dropped. She'd completely forgotten Marcus still had a key. The door opened before she could reach it, and there he stood. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, clothes wrinkled, hair uncombed, dark circles under bloodshot eyes. "What are you doing here?" Lauren stayed on her side of the living room, putting the table between them. "I live here." His voice was defensive, uncertain. "No, you don't. You moved in 2 years ago, but this house is in my name. You never paid rent or mortgage. You were a guest, and now you're trespassing." He looked around the living room like he was seeing it for the first time. His gaming console was gone. His books had been removed from the bookshelf. The ugly lamp his mother had bought them had disappeared. Lauren had spent the past week systematically packing his things into boxes that now sat stacked by the door. "You can't just kick me out. I have rights. You have no rights to this property. Check with your father's lawyer if you don't believe me." She gestured to the boxes. "Everything's there. I didn't throw anything away. I was going to have them delivered, but since you're here, you can take them now." He stared at the boxes, and something crumbled in his expression. "This is really happening. You made it happen." Lauren kept her voice level, though her hands were shaking. "You stood up at that dinner and gave me an ultimatum in front of our families. Did you think I'd just cave? That I'd spend our entire marriage competing with Elena for your attention while your parents lectured me about being evolved enough? It wasn't about competition. It was about being mature enough to. Don't." The word came out sharper than she intended. "Don't lecture me about maturity. You wanted to have your cake and eat it too. You wanted a fiancé and an ex-girlfriend and parents who enabled your selfishness. And you got caught." He moved toward the boxes, then stopped, looking at her instead. 5 years? You're throwing away 5 years over one argument? It wasn't one argument. It was the final straw after years of you making me feel like I was never enough. Lauren picked up the shirt draped over one of the boxes, the blue one from their first date. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. "I kept trying to be cooler, more understanding, more evolved. I kept shrinking myself to fit into your idea of a perfect partner. And it was never enough because the problem wasn't me. It was you. That's not fair. You know what's not fair? Spending 5 years building a life with someone, only to discover they think your completely reasonable boundaries make you controlling and antiquated." She set the shirt back down carefully. "I'm not the villain here, no matter how much you need me to be." He opened his mouth, closed it. For a moment, he looked like he might actually hear her, like something might penetrate the wall of defensiveness his parents had built around him. His shoulders sagged slightly. Then his phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it, and when he looked back up, his face had hardened into familiar lines of judgment. "My parents were right about you. You're dramatic. You can't handle anything that doesn't fit your traditional little fantasy." And there it was, the real Marcus. Or maybe the Marcus his parents had created, the one who thought respecting boundaries was oppressive and expecting monogamy was controlling. Get out, Lauren said quietly. Take your things and get out. I'm changing the locks tomorrow, and if you come back here, I'll call the police. He started loading boxes into his car, making multiple trips. Lauren stayed at the dining table, pretending to work but really just listening to the door open and close, each trip carrying away another piece of the past 5 years. On his 4th trip, he nearly dropped a box and swore under his breath. Lauren didn't offer to help. On his final trip, Marcus stopped in the doorway, one hand on the frame. You'll regret this when you're alone and you realize how good you had it. I already know how good I have it, Lauren interrupted. I have a house I own outright, a career I love, and parents who don't manipulate me into thinking emotional abuse is enlightenment. What do you have? He didn't answer. Just grabbed the last box and left, pulling the door closed behind him with more force than necessary. Lauren sat in the silence after he left, waiting for the breakdown she thought would come. The tears, the second-guessing, the urge to run after him and apologize for being harsh. But it didn't come. Instead, she felt this strange lightness, like she'd been holding her breath for years and could finally exhale fully. The next morning, a locksmith came and changed every lock in the house. New keys, new deadbolts, even the one on the back door that stuck. The house felt different afterward, like it had been cleansed. Truly hers for the first time since Marcus had moved in. Lauren called her father that evening. He came by yesterday. Got his things. How are you holding up? Better than I expected. She looked around her living room, noticing all the small changes that made it feel like hers again. I think I'm going to be okay, Dad. I never doubted it, he said, his voice warm with pride. That night, Lauren slept better than she had in months. The first person outside family to ask about the cancelled wedding was Lauren's hairdresser. She'd known Diane for years, and Diane had been excited to do her wedding hair. Now she was carefully trimming Lauren's ends while listening to the explanation. Wait, he said that in front of everyone? Diane's scissors paused mid-snip. Gave you an ultimatum about his ex-girlfriend at your rehearsal dinner? Yep. And his parents were completely okay with it. They encouraged it. His mother actually laughed when she saw how shocked everyone was. Diane shook her head, resuming her work with sharp, precise cuts. Well, you know what they're saying about you, right? Lauren's stomach tightened. What are they saying? That you had some kind of emotional breakdown, that you called off the wedding because you couldn't handle modern relationships. Diane caught Lauren's eye in the mirror. But everyone I know who was actually there is telling a completely different story. They're saying you handled it like a boss and that Marcus's family is delusional. Over the next 2 weeks, Lauren heard variations of this conversation repeatedly. Marcus's family had launched a full campaign to paint her as unstable, jealous, and irrational. But they'd made a critical mistake. They'd given that ultimatum in front of 23 witnesses who had no reason to lie for them. Her cousin called with an update. You need to hear what people are saying at the country club. It's actually incredible. I'm not sure I want to know, Lauren said, though she was curious despite herself. Trust me, you do. Her cousin sounded almost gleeful. Marcus's mother tried to play the victim at her book club last week. Said you'd abandoned her son without warning, that you were never mature enough for him, that you had some kind of jealous episode. That sounds about right. Wait, there's more. Someone who was at the rehearsal dinner, that woman who married into the Wellington family, she spoke up. She told everyone exactly what Marcus said, how smug his parents looked, how calmly you handled it. By the end, Marcus's mother's face was so red she had to leave early. Several women followed her out, and not to comfort her. Lauren felt a small, vindictive satisfaction at that image. The truth spread like wildfire through their interconnected social circles. Every person at that dinner had their own network of friends, family, and co-workers. Within days, the real story had reached every corner of the community they moved in. Marcus had stood up at a pre-wedding dinner, announced his ex-girlfriend would always be part of his life, and given his fiancée an ultimatum. Lauren had simply taken him at his word and walked away with her dignity intact. His family's attempt to rewrite history crumbled under the weight of actual facts. Lauren ran into one of Marcus's college friends at a coffee shop a few weeks later. He looked uncomfortable when he saw her, shifting his weight from foot to foot, but he approached anyway. "Look, I just want to say that what Marcus did was really messed up," he said. "A bunch of us told him that. His parents always had weird ideas about relationships. We used to joke about it in college, but I guess it wasn't actually funny." "Thanks for saying that," Lauren said, genuinely meaning it. "He's not handling any of this well." He hesitated. "The money thing is bad. The social stuff is worse. He keeps saying you overreacted, but I think deep down he knows that's not true." The social humiliation was apparently far worse for Marcus's family than even the financial disaster. They had positioned themselves as progressive and evolved, above the petty constraints of traditional relationships. Now everyone could see them for what they really were, people who wanted to have things both ways without facing consequences. Lauren's phone buzzed with a text from her sister. Mom just got off the phone with one of her friends. Apparently Marcus's mother tried to uninvite our family from some charity gala and was told that if we didn't come, half the attendees would boycott. They're coming as planned. Lauren laughed out loud, startling the customer in line behind her. The next blow to Marcus's family came from an unexpected source. Lauren's best friend from college, Emma, someone she'd lost touch with after getting engaged, reached out via text message. "I saw the news about your wedding. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you during the relationship. I should have said something years ago." They met for drinks that weekend, and Emma was apologetic from the start. "I tried to bring it up once, remember? About how Marcus was slowly isolating you from everyone who cared about you. You got so defensive. I backed off, but I shouldn't have." Lauren felt a lump in her throat. "I wasn't ready to hear it then." "Are you okay now? Really okay?" "Yeah," Lauren said, and realized she meant it. "I'm actually really okay." They talked for 3 hours, and it felt like reclaiming a piece of herself she'd forgotten existed. Emma told her about her life, her career, her recent divorce. They laughed about terrible dates and impossible bosses. For that time, Lauren was just herself, not someone's fiancé or ex-fiancé, just Lauren. As she drove home that night, Lauren thought about reputation and truth. Marcus's family had tried to rewrite history, to make themselves the victims and her the villain. But truth has a way of persisting, especially when 23 people witnessed it firsthand. You can't give a public ultimatum and then claim you were betrayed when someone accepts your terms. The social fallout for Marcus's family was complete. They'd lost the moral high ground they'd spent years cultivating. More than that, they'd lost respect. People saw them clearly now, manipulative, delusional, willing to destroy someone's reputation rather than admit fault. Lauren hadn't needed to defend herself. The truth had done that for her. Every witness at that dinner had become an advocate, spreading the real story faster than his family could spread their lies. And Lauren was free. Free from Marcus's manipulation, free from his parents' games, free from pretending she was okay with things that hurt her. The vindication felt good, she wouldn't lie about that. But even better was realizing she didn't need it. Whether people believed her or not, she knew what had happened. She knew she'd made the right choice. That was enough. Lauren heard about what was happening at Marcus's parents' house through her cousin, who heard it from a neighbor who lived 2 doors down. Apparently the fights are loud enough to hear from the street, her cousin told her over coffee. The neighbor said she heard Marcus's mother yelling something about that woman and how Marcus had ruined everything. Lauren felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Satisfaction because they were finally facing consequences for their actions. Sadness because she'd wasted 5 years with someone who came from that kind of dysfunction. A mutual friend who still had contact with Marcus gave her more details, though Lauren hadn't asked. "He's a mess," the friend said. "Living back at home, sleeping until noon, barely eating. His dad walks around the house calculating debts out loud, like some kind of deranged accountant. His mom cries constantly and blames Marcus for everything, the money, the social embarrassment, even things that have nothing to do with the wedding. Lauren set down her coffee cup carefully. That sounds harsh. It gets worse. His mom told him last week that she'd wasted her life raising an ungrateful son who'd destroyed the family's reputation. His dad keeps saying he should have raised Marcus with real values instead of all that progressive nonsense. They're basically blaming each other for how he turned out, and Marcus is caught in the middle. Part of Lauren wanted to feel sorry for him. But then she remembered that smug look on his face at the rehearsal dinner, the way he delivered that ultimatum like he was doing her a favor by being so honest and evolved. The evolved, progressive family facade had completely crumbled. Under financial pressure and social humiliation, they'd revealed themselves to be exactly what they'd always accused traditional families of being: judgmental, cruel, and conditional in their love. Her sister called a few days later, breathless with gossip. His mother had a complete meltdown at her yoga class. Started crying in the middle of Downward Dog, went on this whole rant about ungrateful children and wasted money. The instructor had to ask her to leave. Everyone was staring. The mental image was almost too much. Marcus's mother, who'd always been so composed and superior, falling apart in public over her own son's actions. There's more, her sister continued. Apparently Marcus and his dad got into a screaming match in their driveway last week. The dad was yelling about the loan they took out, how they might have to sell the house, how everything was ruined because Marcus couldn't keep one simple relationship together. 3 neighbors came outside to watch. Lauren thought about that massive house where she'd spent so many uncomfortable dinners being lectured about her antiquated views on relationships. The irony of them potentially losing it because of their own son's actions wasn't lost on her. Another week passed, and Lauren got a text from Emma: "Just saw your ex at the grocery store. He looks terrible, lost weight, hasn't shaved, hollow-eyed. He saw me and literally turned around and left his half-full cart in the aisle." The destruction of Marcus's family was complete. Not just financial, though $95,000 was certainly devastating. The real damage was to their family dynamic and their carefully constructed identity. They had built their entire sense of self around being evolved, enlightened, better than everyone else with their modern views. Now that identity was gone, and they had nothing left but resentment and blame. Lauren thought about Elena, Marcus's ex-girlfriend who was supposed to be such an important part of his life that she had to be included in their marriage. Where was she now? Nowhere, apparently. When Marcus had become a liability instead of an asset, Elena had vanished like smoke. Her mother called one evening. "I ran into Marcus's mother at the market today. She saw me and tried to hide behind the produce section." Can you imagine? A grown woman hiding behind the tomatoes. That must have been awkward. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Her mother paused. She looked like she'd aged 10 years, Lauren. I've never seen someone look so defeated. Lauren understood what her mother meant. There's something particularly devastating about having your entire worldview shattered. Marcus's family had believed they were enlightened, that their way of thinking was superior and more evolved than traditional relationships. Now they were facing the reality that their progressive philosophy had been nothing more than a convenient excuse for selfishness, and it had cost them everything. The environment at their house, from what Lauren kept hearing, had become toxic. The parents blamed Marcus. Marcus blamed them for raising him with unrealistic expectations. Everyone blamed Lauren for not being understanding enough, even though she'd simply taken them at their word. There was no mutual support, no evolved communication, no progressive problem solving. Just anger, recrimination, and the slow disintegration of a family that had never been as functional as they'd pretended. Lauren felt something then that surprised her: pity. Not enough to reach out, not enough to forgive, but enough to recognize that their suffering was largely self-inflicted. They'd created this situation with their arrogance and their ultimatum. Now they were living with the consequences. But mostly, she felt grateful. Grateful she'd escaped before marrying into that dysfunction. Grateful she'd stood up for herself when it mattered most. Grateful she'd never have to sit through another dinner where they lectured her about her inadequacies while their own family rotted from the inside. Marcus's home had become a battleground, and he was losing on all fronts. Lauren had her peaceful house, her career, her family who actually supported her unconditionally. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living well while others drown in the consequences of their own making. Elena disappeared exactly when you'd expect someone like her to disappear, the moment Marcus became unstable, broke, and living with his parents. Lauren's cousin, who followed Elena on social media out of morbid curiosity, showed her the posts one afternoon. Beach vacations in Santorini. Expensive restaurants with Michelin stars. Photos with a new guy who looked nothing like Marcus, older, clearly wealthy, someone who could provide the lifestyle Elena wanted. There was no mention of evolved relationships or fluid family structures. Just a woman moving seamlessly to her next source of entertainment and financial security. She blocked Marcus last week, her cousin said, scrolling through her phone. One of her friends told me he kept texting her, asking to meet up, saying he needed to talk to someone who understood him. She just ghosted him completely. The woman who was supposed to be such an integral part of Marcus's life, the connection that transcended traditional labels, couldn't be bothered to respond to a single message. The great transcendent bond that required Lauren's acceptance had vanished the moment Marcus had nothing left to offer. It had never been about some enlightened approach to relationships. Elena had been convenient, a way for Marcus to keep his options open while having the security of an actual committed partner who did all the emotional labor. Lauren felt a grim satisfaction at that revelation. Not because she wanted Marcus to suffer, exactly, but because it proved what she'd always suspected deep down. 2 months after the cancelled wedding, Lauren was at a coffee shop downtown, working on her laptop, when someone sat down across from her. She looked up, ready to politely tell them the seat was taken, and found herself face to face with Trevor, Marcus's former best friend. They'd always gotten along during the relationship. Trevor was one of the few people in Marcus's life who'd never made her feel inadequate. He was honest, straightforward, funny without being cruel. "Hey," he said, looking uncertain. "Is it okay if I sit? I promise I'm not here on Marcus's behalf." "Sure," Lauren said, curious. He ordered a coffee at the counter, then returned to the table. They sat in awkward silence for a moment before Trevor spoke. "I owe you an apology. I should have said something before the wedding. About Elena, about how Marcus was treating you, about all of it. I was a coward." "You weren't the one who gave me an ultimatum," Lauren pointed out. "No, but I watched it happen for months. The way he'd talk about you when you weren't around, like you were too traditional, too clingy, too demanding for wanting basic respect. The way his parents would nod along like he was so enlightened for keeping Elena in his life." Trevor shook his head. "It was all manipulative garbage, and I knew it. But I didn't say anything." "Why not?" "Honestly, I thought you knew what you were signing up for. I thought maybe you were okay with it, or that it wasn't my place to interfere. But after what happened at that dinner, after hearing how he spoke to you in front of everyone," he ran his hand through his hair, "I realized I'd been a coward for years. You deserved better, and I should have told you." They talked for over an hour. Trevor told her things she hadn't known, patterns she hadn't seen clearly. How Marcus had always been like this, even in college. How his parents had raised him to believe he was special, that normal rules and expectations didn't apply to him. How Elena had actually dated Trevor's roommate first, then moved on to Marcus when the roommate ran out of money and couldn't keep up with her expensive tastes. "She's with some finance guy now," Trevor said. "Saw them together last week at that new restaurant downtown. She walked right past me like we'd never met. Didn't even acknowledge me when I said hello." "She sounds wonderful," Lauren said dryly. Trevor laughed, genuine and surprised. "You know what? You're handling this way better than anyone expected. Better than Marcus is, certainly. He's falling apart. I'm just tired of being angry about it. What's the point?" They started meeting for coffee regularly after that. Nothing romantic, just friendship. Easy conversations about work, books, terrible movies, life in general. Trevor made her laugh. More importantly, He listened when she talked about her architectural projects without that glazed-over expression Marcus had always gotten. One afternoon, about 3 months after the cancelled wedding, Trevor mentioned that Marcus had been asking about him. "What's he saying?" Lauren asked. "That he made a mistake. That he wishes he could talk to you, explain things better, make you understand his perspective." Trevor paused, his expression darkening. "For what it's worth, I think he's completely full of it. He's not sorry about what he did. He's sorry about the consequences." "That sounds exactly right. He asked if I was talking to you. I told him yes, and he completely lost it. Started yelling about loyalty, about how I was betraying him by having coffee with you." Trevor smiled, but there was no humor in it. "I told him I was being exactly as loyal as he deserved, and then I hung up. Haven't talked to him since." That was the moment Lauren realized something had shifted. This friendship with Trevor felt different from anything she'd had during her relationship with Marcus. There was no pretense, no games, no walking on eggshells. Just two people who enjoyed each other's company and respected each other's boundaries. She thought about telling him how much his honesty meant to her, but the words felt too heavy, too soon. Instead, she just said, "Thanks for having coffee with me. For being honest about everything." "Anytime," Trevor said, and she could tell he meant it. Elena was gone, disappeared into whatever new life she'd constructed with her latest wealthy boyfriend. Marcus had lost his best friend on top of everything else. The evolved family structure had collapsed entirely, revealing itself as nothing more than a convenient excuse for selfishness and boundary violations. And Lauren? She had a real friend who was honest with her, who apologized when he'd failed to speak up sooner, who didn't expect her to be anything other than herself. It felt like the beginning of something, though she couldn't quite name what yet. But there was time to figure that out. For now, this friendship was more than enough. 4 months after the cancelled wedding, Lauren did something she'd been putting off for years. She booked a trip to Europe, 2 full weeks in Italy and France, visiting museums, eating incredible food, and doing exactly what she wanted without having to accommodate anyone else's preferences or restrictions. Marcus had always found excuses when she'd brought up traveling together. Too expensive. Wrong time of year. He didn't like touristy destinations. He wanted to go somewhere more authentic that he'd choose. Now Lauren understood he just hadn't wanted to go with her. He hadn't wanted to spend 2 weeks focusing on her interests and happiness. She wandered through the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, stood breathless beneath the Sistine Chapel's ceiling, ate the best pasta of her life in a tiny Roman restaurant where the owner's grandmother was still making sauce in the back at age 92. She took photos for herself, not for social media. She talked to strangers in her terrible Italian. She got lost on purpose and found hidden piazzas that weren't in any guidebook. For 2 full weeks, Lauren was just herself. Not someone's fiancé, not someone's ex, not someone being judged for being too traditional or not evolved enough. Just a woman who loved art and good food and adventure. When she came back tanned, relaxed, and genuinely happy, her office had news waiting. "The historic theater project you've been working on for the past year has been approved," her boss said, calling her into the office on her first day back. "The board was incredibly impressed with your presentation. They want you to lead the entire restoration project." Lauren felt something click into place inside her chest. This was what she'd been working toward for years. This was the dream she'd sacrificed for, the career that had taken a back seat during 5 years of accommodating Marcus's needs and schedule, of making herself smaller so he could feel bigger. "It's an 18-month project," her boss continued. "It'll be the biggest commission of your career. It'll establish you as a serious architect in the historic preservation field. Are you interested?" "I accept," Lauren said, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. The project consumed her in the best possible way. Site visits where she got to wear a hard hat and explore the bones of a 1920s theater. Meetings with historians who dedicated their lives to preservation. Late nights reviewing plans and specifications, making sure every detail honored the building's original character while meeting modern safety codes. She loved every exhausting, challenging, rewarding minute of it. Her friends started coming back, the ones who drifted away during her relationship with Marcus. Emma introduced her to a book club that met monthly. Her sister started hosting weekly family dinners again. Lauren joined a cycling group that met Saturday mornings for rides through the city. Slowly, without fully realizing it, Lauren was building a life that felt authentically hers. Not smaller to fit someone else's expectations. Not compromised to avoid conflict. Just hers. Trevor, who'd gone from Marcus's friend to just friend, without any qualifier, texted one Thursday afternoon, "Coffee? Or are you too busy being a fancy architect now?" They'd been meeting regularly, and the conversations flowed naturally. He made her laugh with stories about his engineering projects. More importantly, he actually listened when she talked about her work, asked intelligent questions, remembered details from previous conversations, celebrated her successes without any hint of competition or jealousy. Over coffee that Thursday, Trevor mentioned he'd started rock climbing at a gym downtown. "It's surprisingly therapeutic. You should try it sometime." "I'm terrible at anything that requires upper body strength," Lauren admitted. "That's the point. You get better." He paused, then added with a smile, "Plus, I'm pretty sure you've climbed bigger obstacles than a fake wall recently." That made her laugh, real, genuine laughter that came from somewhere deep. They talked about Marcus once, briefly, when Trevor brought it up. "He called me last week. Left a voicemail saying I was a terrible friend for choosing you over him." Trevor shook his head. "The delusion is incredible. Like he didn't give you an ultimatum in front of dozens of people and then act shocked when you took him seriously." "How is he doing?" Lauren asked, surprising herself with the question. "Not great. Still living with his parents. The environment there sounds toxic, everyone blaming everyone else, constant fighting. His mom apparently told him last month that she regretted ever having children." Trevor's expression softened with something like pity. "It's a mess. But it's a mess he helped create." Lauren felt an echo of her earlier pity, but it was distant now. Marcus had made his choices. She'd made hers. They were living with the consequences. 6 months after the cancelled wedding, the theater restoration project was in full swing. Lauren spent her days coordinating with contractors, sourcing period-appropriate materials, and solving the 1,000 small problems that came with renovating a 100-year-old building. She was happier than she'd been in years. One afternoon, while reviewing tile samples with the lead contractor, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Lauren? It's Patricia. From wedding planning." "Oh, hi Patricia. How are you?" "I'm good. Listen, I'm calling because something interesting happened. Marcus's parents tried to hire me for another event, some charity thing, and I turned them down." "You didn't have to do that," Lauren said, though she was touched. "Actually, I did. They spent 20 minutes trying to convince me that you were unstable and irrational, that I should have sided with them about the cancellation. I told them I had multiple documented records of exactly what happened and that if they continued to harass my former clients, meaning you, I'd be happy to share those records publicly." Lauren sat down on a nearby sawhorse, feeling a rush of gratitude. "Thank you, Patricia. You made the right call that night. I've been doing this long enough to spot toxic family dynamics. You dodged a bullet." She paused. "Also, I heard about your theater project. Congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment." After they hung up, Lauren sat for a moment in the gutted theater lobby, surrounded by construction dust and exposed brick and the bones of something beautiful that she was helping restore. She thought about her life 6 months ago, scared, uncertain, facing the ruins of a 5-year relationship. And now here she was, leading the biggest project of her career, surrounded by people who respected her, building friendships that felt real and honest. The universe had a funny way of working out sometimes. The magazine article came out on a Thursday morning in late autumn. Rising Stars in Historic Preservation, featuring a full-page photo of Lauren in the half-restored theater lobby, hard hat under her arm, looking confident and professional. The article highlighted her innovative approach to preservation, honoring original features while thoughtfully updating infrastructure and safety systems. It quoted the Historical Society president calling her one of the most promising young architects in the field. Lauren's phone exploded with congratulations. Her parents, her sister, Emma, colleagues, friends she hadn't talked to in months. Even Patricia sent a text, saw the article. "So proud of you." Trevor called instead of texting. "Famous architect now, huh? Should I start making appointments to talk to you?" "Shut up," she said, laughing. "I'm serious though." "That's incredible, Lauren. The photo is great, and the article really captures what you've been working toward. You should be proud." "I am," she said, and realized she genuinely meant it. That evening, her boss called to tell her the Historical Society wanted to discuss 2 more restoration projects. The magazine article had put her on the map in ways she hadn't anticipated. "This is just the beginning," he said. "You're building something significant here." The gala for the theater's reopening was scheduled for Saturday night, black tie, attended by the mayor and seemingly everyone important in the city's cultural scene. Lauren had been so busy with final details that she'd barely thought about what she'd wear or who she'd bring. Trevor had asked to be her date 2 weeks earlier, and she'd said yes without hesitation. It wasn't romantic, exactly, but it felt right. He'd been there through the restoration process, listening to her vent about stubborn contractors and impossible deadlines, celebrating every small victory. Friday night, her sister came over to help her choose a dress. They settled on a deep emerald green that Lauren had bought months ago but never worn. "You look amazing," her sister said, stepping back to assess. "Like someone who's absolutely winning at life." "I don't know about that," Lauren said, but she did feel good. Confident. Like herself again. The theater was absolutely transformed for the gala. The restoration team had outdone themselves. The lobby gleamed with restored brass fixtures and period-appropriate lighting. The main auditorium looked like something from a Golden Age movie, all velvet seats and gilded details, and that massive chandelier they'd spent 3 months carefully cleaning and rewiring. Trevor arrived to pick her up looking sharp in a fitted black suit. He gave a low whistle when he saw her. "You clean up pretty well," he said. "Back at you." They arrived at the theater to find it already buzzing with guests. The mayor was there, champagne in hand, talking to the Historical Society board. Lauren recognized architects she'd admired for years, preservation specialists whose work she'd studied in school. People kept stopping her to congratulate her on the restoration. The mayor shook her hand and talked about the project's importance to the city. The Historical Society president introduced her to donors who wanted to discuss future projects. Trevor stayed at her side, not hovering, just present. When conversations got technical and boring, he'd excuse himself to get drinks. When she needed a break from networking, he'd somehow sense it and suggest they look at the restored balcony. An hour into the event, Lauren was talking to a preservation specialist about mortar composition when she felt Trevor tense beside her. She followed his gaze and saw Marcus across the lobby. He was wearing a server's uniform, carrying a tray of champagne glasses. Their eyes met across the crowded room. The shock on his face was visceral and raw. He'd clearly known she'd be there, this was her project, after all, but seeing it in person was different. Seeing her in that dress, with Trevor at her side, surrounded by success and respect and admiration. Marcus looked away quickly and disappeared toward the kitchen. "Are you okay?" Trevor asked quietly. "Yeah," Lauren said, and she was. No triumph, no vindictiveness, just a strange sense of closure. "I'm okay." She turned back to the preservation specialist and continued their conversation about lime-based mortars like nothing had happened. The rest of the evening was a blur of champagne and congratulations and networking. People kept telling her how beautiful the restoration was, how faithful to the original vision while still being functional for modern use. Near the end of the night, Lauren found herself standing alone in the back of the main auditorium, just looking at what they'd built. All those months of planning and problem-solving and late nights reviewing specifications had resulted in this, something beautiful and functional that would outlast all of them. Trevor found her there. "This is incredible. What you've done here. It wasn't just me. There were dozens of people involved. But you led it. You made the decisions that protected the building's character while making it work for today. He stood beside her, both of them looking up at the restored ceiling with its intricate plasterwork. You should be proud. I am, she said softly. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Trevor spoke again. I know this isn't the time or place, but I need to say something. Lauren's heart did a small flip. These past few months, getting to know you without Marcus's bullshit clouding everything, it's been really good. You're funny and smart and driven, and I wish I'd had the courage to tell you years ago that you deserved better than what he was giving you. He turned to look at her. I don't want to push or make things weird, but I'd like to take you to dinner sometime. Like, an actual date. Not just coffee as friends. Lauren smiled. I'd like that. Yeah. Yeah. Before either of them could say anything else, the event coordinator approached to tell Lauren the mayor wanted a photo with her and the Historical Society board. Trevor squeezed her hand once, then let go. Go be impressive. I'll wait. The photo session took 20 minutes. The mayor, the board members, the lead contractor, various donors who'd funded the restoration. Lauren smiled until her face hurt, shook hands until her arm ached, and felt genuinely grateful for all of it. When she finally escaped, Trevor was waiting near the lobby entrance, scrolling through his phone. Ready to go? He asked. So ready. They walked out into the cool autumn night, the sounds of the gala fading behind them. Trevor's car was parked 2 blocks away, and they walked slowly, neither in a hurry to end the evening. So, Trevor said. Dinner next weekend? It's a date. He grinned, and Lauren felt something warm unfold in her chest. Not the desperate butterfly feeling she'd had with Marcus, but something steadier. More real. As they reached his car, Lauren glanced back at the theater, all lit up and beautiful. Inside, Marcus was probably still serving champagne to people who'd come to celebrate her success. The irony wasn't lost on her. But mostly, she just felt grateful. Grateful for the choice she'd made that night at the rehearsal dinner. Grateful for every hard decision that had followed. Grateful that she'd chosen herself when it mattered most. Trevor opened her car door, and she got in, already looking forward to next weekend. Near the end of the gala, Lauren needed a moment to herself. The constant networking and congratulations were wonderful but exhausting. She slipped into a service hallway, looking for a quiet spot to catch her breath. She found Marcus instead. He was leaning against the wall, eyes closed, looking utterly defeated. The server's uniform hung loosely on him. He'd lost weight, she noticed. His face was drawn, hollow-eyed, aged beyond his years. He opened his eyes when he heard her footsteps. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. All the history between them hung in the air, 5 years of good memories tangled with manipulation, the proposal in the park, the rehearsal dinner ultimatum, all of it. Congratulations, he said finally, his voice rough and quiet. On everything. The theater, the magazine article, all of it. Thank you. And on Trevor. He swallowed hard. He was always better than me. I just didn't want to admit it. Lauren didn't know what to say to that. My parents blame me for everything now, Marcus continued, like he couldn't stop himself. Every day it's another reminder of how much money I cost them, how I destroyed the family's reputation. Elena won't even acknowledge that I exist. Trevor chose you over me, which, fair. I have a job I hate, living with people who resent me. He looked at her directly then, and she saw real pain in his eyes. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I destroyed it because I thought I was too evolved to need you. You gave me an ultimatum, Lauren said softly. I know. I thought you'd cave like you always had before. I thought I could have everything, you doing all the emotional labor while I kept my options open with Elena and maintained my parents' approval. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I thought I was so enlightened. Turns out I was just selfish and stupid. Lauren felt an unexpected wave of sadness. Not for what she'd lost, but for the waste of it all. 5 years with someone who'd never really seen her, who'd mistaken her kindness for weakness and her boundaries for inadequacy. "I hope things get better for you," she said, and meant it. "They won't," he said simply. "But thank you for saying it anyway." She walked away then, back toward the gala, back toward Trevor and her family and the life she was building. Behind her, Marcus returned to his tray of champagne glasses, just another invisible server at someone else's celebration. When Lauren found Trevor, he took one look at her face and pulled her into a quiet corner. "You talked to him?" "Briefly." He apologized. "How do you feel?" She thought about it. 2 years ago, that apology would have meant everything. A year ago, it might have given her closure. Now it was just words from someone she used to know. "I feel nothing," she said, surprised by her own honesty. "It's like looking at a stranger who happens to know facts about my past." Trevor smiled and kissed her forehead gently. "Good. That means you've actually moved on." They drove back through quiet city streets toward Trevor's place, the loft he'd bought downtown with exposed brick and huge windows overlooking the river. Over the past few months, Lauren had spent more and more time there. Her toothbrush lived in his bathroom. Her favorite coffee was in his cupboard. It had happened naturally, without pressure or ultimatums or games. Inside, Trevor loosened his tie while Lauren kicked off her heels with a groan of relief. "These things are death traps," she said, rubbing her feet. "But they looked amazing. That's the trade-off." He poured them both glasses of wine, and they sat on his couch, the city lights twinkling through the windows. "This was a good night," Trevor said. "It really was." "Even the Marcus part?" "Especially the Marcus part. It was like seeing a ghost and realizing it couldn't hurt me anymore." They sat in comfortable silence, drinking wine and watching the city. Lauren thought about the path that had brought her here, the cancelled wedding, the social fallout, the slow rebuilding of her life and identity, this unexpected relationship with someone who'd been there all along but she'd never really seen. "I'm glad we're doing this," she said. "The wine?" "Me too." "No, I mean us. This." She gestured between them. "I'm glad we're trying." Trevor set down his wine glass and turned to face her fully. "I've been waiting for years to try this. Since college, really. But you were with Marcus, and then I was dating someone else, and the timing was never right. And then after the wedding," he stopped, reconsidering. "After you called off the wedding, I didn't want to be that guy who swoops in immediately. I wanted you to have time to figure out who you were without him." "I appreciate that," Lauren said. "I needed that time." "I know. And now here we are. Here we are." He kissed her then, gentle and sure and nothing like the desperate, proving something kisses she'd had with Marcus. This felt like coming home to a place she'd been searching for without knowing it. When they pulled apart, Trevor smiled. "So, about that dinner next weekend. Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere but that place his parents took us to lecture me about being emotionally evolved." He laughed. "Deal." The next morning, Lauren woke up in Trevor's loft with sunlight streaming through the massive windows. He was already up, making coffee in the kitchen, humming something under his breath. She watched him from the couch, where she'd somehow migrated during the night, still wearing her gala dress like the world's most uncomfortable pajamas. He looked comfortable, at ease, unguarded in a way Marcus had never been. "Coffee?" he called when he noticed she was awake. "Please." He brought her a mug, already prepared exactly how she liked it, and sat beside her. "How do you feel?" "Like I need to change out of this dress immediately," she said. "But otherwise pretty good. I can drive you home after breakfast. Or I could borrow some of your clothes and we could go get brunch. Even better." Later, wearing Trevor's MIT sweatshirt and her gala dress, a ridiculous combination that made them both laugh, they went to a diner that served the best pancakes in the city. Over coffee and eggs, they planned their actual first date for the following weekend. "Nothing too fancy," Lauren said. "I've had enough fancy to last a lifetime. How about that Italian place near the river?" The one that looks terrible from the outside but supposedly has incredible food. Perfect. Lauren's phone buzzed with a text from her sister. Mom wants to know if you're coming to dinner Sunday. Also, she heard through the grapevine that you and Trevor left the gala together and is beside herself with excitement. Lauren showed Trevor the message, and he laughed. Should I be worried about meeting your parents as your actual boyfriend instead of just Marcus's friend? Terrified, she said, grinning. My dad has very strong opinions about anyone who dates his daughters. Great. Looking forward to it. But he was smiling too, and Lauren realized that this was what healthy relationships looked like. Easy teasing, genuine interest in meeting family, plans that felt exciting instead of obligatory. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Work during the day, Lauren at the theater and other restoration projects that kept coming her way, Trevor at his engineering firm. Dinners together when their schedules allowed. Weekends exploring the city, trying new restaurants, going to museums and concerts, and all the things Lauren had stopped doing during her relationship with Marcus. Emma invited them both to her birthday party, and Lauren watched Trevor charm her friends with the same effortless friendliness he brought to everything. No showing off, no trying to be the center of attention, just genuine conversation and interest in other people. I like him, Emma said later, pulling Lauren aside. He's nothing like Marcus. And the way he looks at you, like you're actually interesting and funny and worth listening to, that's how it should be. Lauren's parents invited them to Sunday dinner, and her father interrogated Trevor for a solid 20 minutes about his job, his intentions, his views on various topics. Trevor handled it with grace and humor, never getting defensive or annoyed. Later, her father pulled her aside while they were cleaning up. He's good for you. Honest. Kind. Doesn't try to make himself look bigger by making you smaller. I know, Dad. And he actually listens when you talk. Did you notice that? You were telling that story about the theater contractor, and he was genuinely interested. Not just waiting for his turn to talk. Lauren had noticed. It was one of the 1,000 small differences between this relationship and her last one. 3 months into dating, Trevor asked if she wanted to go away for a weekend. Nothing extravagant, just a bed and breakfast in the mountains, some hiking, time away from the city. I'd love that, Lauren said. The weekend was exactly what she needed. Cool mountain air, challenging hikes that left her muscles pleasantly sore, evenings by the fireplace in their room. They talked about everything and nothing, childhood memories, career ambitions, books they'd loved, terrible movies they'd watched too many times. On their last night, lying in bed watching shadows from the fireplace dance on the ceiling, Trevor said, I'm falling in love with you. Just so you know. Lauren's heart did a somersault. I'm falling in love with you too. Good, he said, pulling her closer. That makes this much easier. They drove back to the city the next day, holding hands during the quiet stretches of highway, and Lauren thought about how drastically her life had changed in the past year. She'd gone from engaged to Marcus, constantly walking on eggshells, always trying to be evolved enough, perpetually feeling inadequate, to single and terrified but free. And then, gradually, to this, happy, confident, in love with someone who actually valued her for who she was. The universe really did have a funny way of working out. One afternoon, about 4 months after the gala, Lauren ran into someone unexpected at a coffee shop downtown. Marcus's mother. The woman looked older, worn down in a way that went beyond simple aging. Her expensive clothes hung differently, like she'd lost weight. The confidence she'd always radiated had been replaced by something brittle and defensive. They saw each other at the same time. For a moment, Lauren thought about turning around and leaving. But something made her stay. Marcus's mother approached, her hands clenched around her purse strap. Lauren. Mrs. Harrison. An awkward silence stretched between them. Other customers moved around them, oblivious to the tension. I wanted to, his mother stopped, started again. I owe you an apology. For what we said at the dinner, for the messages afterward, for trying to paint you as unstable when you were just standing up for yourself. Lauren didn't say anything, just waited. We thought we were so enlightened. So much better than everyone else with our progressive views and modern family structures. Her voice cracked slightly. But we were really just enabling Marcus's selfishness and calling it evolution. Why are you telling me this now? Lauren asked quietly. Because my marriage is falling apart. Because Marcus barely speaks to us. Because Elena wasn't the evolved free spirit we thought she was just using Marcus, and she disappeared the moment things got difficult. She looked directly at Lauren, and there were tears in her eyes. Because you were right, and we were wrong, and I've spent the past year watching my family self-destruct because we couldn't admit that. Lauren felt that same complicated mix of pity and vindication she'd felt at the gala. I appreciate the apology. I do. But it doesn't change what happened. I know. I needed you to know that you weren't crazy or dramatic or any of the things we called you. You were the only sane person in that room that night, and we couldn't see it because it would have meant admitting we'd raised our son to be selfish. How is Marcus? Lauren asked. His mother's face crumpled. Lost. Angry. Blaming everyone but himself, which I suppose he learned from us. She wiped at her eyes. He saw the article about your theater project. Didn't speak for 3 days afterward. I think that's when it finally hit him what he'd thrown away. Lauren didn't know what to say to that. Part of her felt sad for Marcus, for the wreckage of his life and family. But mostly, she just felt distant from it all. These were the consequences of choices he'd made, worldviews his parents had instilled, ultimatums they'd all supported. I hope you find peace, Lauren said finally. All of you. But I can't be part of that process. His mother nodded. I understand. I just wanted you to know that you were right. About everything. She walked away then, leaving Lauren standing in the coffee shop line with a strange mix of emotions. Vindication felt hollow when you saw the real cost of it, broken families, shattered relationships, years of dysfunction finally collapsing under its own weight. She texted Trevor, just ran into Marcus's mom. She apologized. It was weird. His response came quickly, are you okay? Yeah. Just processing. Want to talk about it tonight? Yes, please. That evening, over takeout in Trevor's loft, Lauren told him about the encounter. He listened without interrupting, then said, that must have been surreal. It was. Part of me felt vindicated, like, see, I wasn't crazy. But mostly, I just felt sad. Their whole family is falling apart, and it didn't have to be this way. They made their choices, Trevor said gently. You made yours. The fact that there's led to unhappiness doesn't mean you're responsible for fixing it. I know. It's just 5 years. I spent 5 years with Marcus. Part of me still remembers the good times, even though I know the relationship was unhealthy. That's normal. People aren't all good or all bad. Marcus had good qualities, that's why you fell for him. But those good qualities don't erase the way he treated you or the ultimatum he gave you. Lauren leaned into him. How did you get so wise? Years of watching my best friend treat his girlfriend badly and not saying anything. I learned a lot about what not to do. They sat quietly for a while, finishing their food and watching the city lights. Later, they'd watch a terrible movie and fall asleep on the couch. But for now, Lauren just felt grateful, for Trevor, for her career, for the choice she'd made to walk away when it mattered most. A year after the cancelled wedding, Lauren's life looked completely different. The theater restoration had been such a success that she'd been offered a position as lead architect for a series of historic preservation projects across the city. Her calendar was booked for the next 2 years. The magazine article had opened doors she'd only dreamed about. She and Trevor had been together for 8 months, and it kept getting better instead of harder. They'd moved in together, into his loft since her house felt too tied to her relationship with Marcus. She'd sold it and split the profits between a down payment on the loft and a nice safety cushion in savings. Emma and her book club had become a regular part of Lauren's social life. Her family dinners with her parents and sister were weekly traditions. She'd joined an architecture mentorship program, working with grad students interested in historic preservation. Her phone rarely reminded her of Marcus anymore. The threatening messages, the desperate calls, all of it had stopped months ago. She'd heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd finally moved out of his parents' house and into a shared apartment with roommates. That he was working at a tech startup, trying to rebuild his life. That his relationship with his parents was still strained but slowly improving. She hoped that was true. Not because she wanted anything to do with him, but because she'd learned that carrying anger and resentment only hurt herself. Marcus had been selfish and manipulative, enabled by toxic parents. But he was also a person who was suffering the consequences of his choices, and that was punishment enough. One Saturday evening, Trevor surprised her by cooking an elaborate dinner. When she walked into the loft after a long day at a historic site, she found candles on the table, music playing softly, and the smell of something delicious coming from the kitchen. "What's all this?" she asked, setting down her bag. "I wanted to do something nice for you," Trevor said, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You've been working so hard on that courthouse project." They ate dinner talking about their weeks, their upcoming vacation plans, a podcast they'd both been listening to. Easy, comfortable conversation that flowed naturally. After dinner, while they were cleaning up, Trevor said, "I have something I want to talk to you about." Lauren's stomach flipped. "That sounds ominous." "It's not bad, I promise." He dried his hands on a towel, looking slightly nervous. "I've been offered a position in Seattle. It's a huge opportunity, lead engineer on a massive sustainability project. It would be a significant career move." Lauren's heart sank. "Oh. But," Trevor continued quickly, "I'm not taking it unless you want to come with me. And I mean that. If you're not ready to leave the city, if your work is here, if you're not interested in relocating, I'll turn it down." "Trevor, that's a huge opportunity." "You can't turn it down because of me." "Yes, I can. Because you're more important than any job." He took her hands. "I'm not Marcus. I'm not going to give you an ultimatum or make you choose between what you need and what I want. I'm telling you about an opportunity and asking what you think. If you don't want to go, we stay. Simple as that." Lauren felt tears prick her eyes. "That's not fair to you." "It's completely fair. You're the person I want to build a life with. That means making decisions together, not issuing ultimatums and expecting you to fall in line. What if my work keeps me here? Then we stay here. Or we do long distance for a while if that's what makes sense. Or I commute and you visit on weekends. There are options that don't involve one of us sacrificing everything." Lauren pulled him into a hug, pressing her face against his chest. This was what partnership looked like. Not one person demanding compliance and calling it evolution, but two people working together to find solutions that honored both their needs. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course. There's no rush. I don't have to give them an answer for 3 weeks." Over the next few days, Lauren researched the Seattle architecture scene. Historic preservation opportunities, firms doing interesting work, potential projects she could be part of. She called mentors and colleagues, feeling out whether relocating would help or hurt her career. The answer surprised her: it could actually be a great move. Seattle had a huge push for historic preservation, with dozens of projects looking for experienced architects. Several firms there had reached out after her magazine article, interested in her approach and methodology. She could build something there. Maybe even something bigger than what she had in the city. On Sunday dinner at her parents' house, Lauren brought it up. Her family listened quietly as she explained Trevor's offer, the Seattle opportunity, her research into the architecture scene there. "So what are you going to do?" her sister asked. "I think I want to go," Lauren said, surprising herself by saying it out loud. "Not because Trevor asked me to, but because it's actually a good opportunity for both of us. Because I could build something meaningful there. Because I'm not afraid of taking risks anymore." Her mother smiled. "Then you should go." "Really?" Lauren had expected resistance, worry, pleased to stay close to family. "Really," her father said. You've built a good life here. Now go build an even better one there. We're 3 hours away by plane. We can visit. That night, Lauren told Trevor she wanted to go to Seattle with him. Are you sure? He asked. I don't want you to do this just for me. I'm not. I'm doing it for us, and for the opportunities there, and because I'm finally brave enough to choose what I actually want instead of what feels safe. He kissed her then, deep and happy and full of promise. We're really doing this. We're really doing this. They moved to Seattle 3 months later. The transition was easier than Lauren expected. Trevor's new company helped with relocation, and she quickly found work with a preservation firm that was thrilled to have her expertise. Their new apartment overlooked the water, with mountains visible on clear days. They explored the city together, coffee shops and hiking trails and bookstores and farmers markets. They built a life that felt wholly theirs, untethered from past relationships or old expectations. Lauren's parents visited for Thanksgiving. Her sister came for New Year's. Emma flew out in the spring for a long weekend, and they spent 3 days eating incredible seafood and laughing about everything and nothing. Work was challenging and fulfilling. Lauren led a team restoring a 1920s theater, different from the one in her old city, but familiar enough that she knew exactly what she was doing. The Historical Society in Seattle sought her input on multiple projects. Her reputation grew. And through it all, Trevor was there, not hovering or controlling, just present. Supporting her career, celebrating her successes, listening when she needed to vent about difficult contractors or impossible deadlines. One evening, about 6 months after moving to Seattle, they were cooking dinner together when Trevor said, I've been thinking. That sounds dangerous, Lauren teased. I want to marry you. Not right now. I know we've only been together a year and a half, and I don't want to rush. But eventually. When the time is right. I just wanted you to know that's where I see this going. Lauren set down her cutting board and turned to face him. I want that too. Eventually. When it feels right instead of pressured or expected. No ultimatums, he said, smiling. Never any ultimatums. They kissed in their kitchen with the Seattle skyline visible through the windows, and Lauren thought about the journey that had brought her here. From that rehearsal dinner where her world had shattered, through the painful rebuilding, to this moment of genuine happiness with someone who actually valued her. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen turns out to be the catalyst for the best thing. 2 years after that cancelled wedding, Lauren was happier than she'd ever been. She had a career she loved, a partner who respected her, a life built on choices she'd made for herself rather than compromises she'd made to keep peace. She still thought about Marcus sometimes, wondered if he'd found his footing, if his family had healed, if he'd learned anything from the wreckage. But those thoughts were distant, like remembering a character from a book she'd read long ago. The woman who'd walked away from that rehearsal dinner felt like a different person now. Braver, stronger, more certain of her own worth. That woman had saved her. Had chosen herself when everyone expected her to cave. Had walked away from 5 years and $95,000 in cancellation fees and all the social pressure, simply because staying would have cost her soul. Best decision she'd ever made. Trevor proposed properly 2 years after they moved to Seattle. Not at a public place where she'd feel pressured to say yes. Not with a grand gesture designed to impress other people. Just the two of them on a quiet beach at sunset, with a ring he'd designed himself based on her love of architectural details. I love you, he said simply. I want to build a life with you. Will you marry me? Yes, Lauren said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony on the same beach where he'd proposed. Just family and close friends, no elaborate production or rehearsal dinners designed to impress people. Lauren's father walked her down a makeshift aisle. Her sister stood as maid of honor. Trevor's brother was his best man. Emma gave a toast about finally seeing Lauren happy with someone who deserved her. Lauren's father gave a speech about watching his daughter find her strength and choose herself. Trevor's mother welcomed Lauren to the family with genuine warmth and kindness. No one gave ultimatums. No one lectured about evolved relationships or modern family structures. It was just people who loved them, celebrating their commitment to each other. During the reception, while dancing with Trevor under string lights on the beach, Lauren thought about the path that had brought her here. The broken engagement that had felt like the end of the world. The slow rebuild. The unexpected friendship that had grown into love. The move across the country. All the small and large choices that had led to this moment. "What are you thinking?" Trevor asked, pulling her closer. "That I'm really happy." "Good. That's the goal." Later, when they were saying goodbye to guests, Lauren's mother pulled her aside. "You know what I love most about today?" her mother said. "What?" "Watching you marry someone who sees you. Who actually knows who you are and loves that person, instead of trying to shape you into someone different." Lauren hugged her mother tight, grateful beyond words for family who'd supported her through the hardest year of her life and celebrated with her now. That night, in their hotel room overlooking the ocean, Trevor said, "Best day of my life." "Mine too." They fell asleep tangled together, and Lauren dreamed of the future they'd build together. Not perfect, no life was perfect, but real and honest and based on mutual respect instead of power dynamics disguised as enlightenment. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living well, choosing people who value you, building a life worth living. Lauren had learned that lesson sitting at a dinner table while her ex-fiancé gave her an impossible ultimatum. She'd learned it by walking away, by rebuilding, by refusing to settle for less than she deserved. And now, years later, she had everything, not because she'd destroyed Marcus, but because she'd chosen herself. That choice had made all the difference.